Alright, here are 10 great, well-made documentaries you may not know about, all available to stream. Okay? Number 1. Essentially structured like a horror movie, Hotel Coolgardie features 2 young Finnish blonde women who have been backpacking around the world and they ran out of money and now they need to find a job. They end up accepting a gig bartending at a tiny backwater mining town in Western Australia, populated by walking stereotypes of blue-collar, racist, misogynistic, work hard, play hard types, mostly men, who consider these girls fresh meat. When the girls don't really play ball, the men get increasingly aggravated and increasingly unpleasant. This film is sweaty and dirty and ugly and makes you regret humanity, or just hope for some. It's shot in a fly-on-the-wall style. In fact, all of the movies I'll mention in this video are, to some degree, verite documentaries. Verite means truth, but in the context of documentaries, verite basically means we're embedded in the action without relying on narration or interviews. It's show, don't tell. I love this immersive style of filmmaking. Set in post-industrial Ohio, this is a really fascinating look at a shuttered General Motors plant that's taken over by a Chinese billionaire. He hires 2,000 American workers, so things start off on a positive and optimistic note, but then things get increasingly strange as cultural differences reveal themselves after a more and more Chinese way of running things is introduced. One of the really interesting things about this documentary is the differences in expectations among American workers versus the Chinese working class. And maybe this all seems kind of boring, but it's actually riveting and even uproariously funny, especially when the Chinese billionaire, who is treated like a king, makes all these demands leading up to and during his factory visit. Demands that, at least in American eyes, seem pretty ludicrous. It's got kind of a crazy title, but this is an unflinching look at sex workers in Thailand, Bangladesh, and Mexico. Some sex work is awesome. This is not that kind of sex work. These are sometimes very young women forced into prostitution due to poverty or other sad circumstances. But what's great about this movie is that it doesn't really judge and it doesn't proselytize. It doesn't push an agenda. It just shows you moments in these women's lives. You see their struggles, but also some joy and hope amidst bleak circumstances. This is deeply empathetic filmmaking. Some Kind of Heaven is a wonderfully quiet verite collage, embedding you in The Villages, the world's largest retirement community in Florida. We meet all kinds of interesting characters who live in this fake Disney-fied town. Some of the residents are quite happy there, and others struggle to sort of fit into this Technicolor dream. I've read so many articles about this place. I just find it so fascinating, especially the sort of sexual shenanigans that go on there. Anyway, this documentary has golf carts, psychedelic drugs, true love, gold diggers, weirdos, worrisome politics, and a heightened, slightly surreal Truman Show style. It's an easy and fun watch. Now, this is one of the most expertly constructed documentaries I've ever seen, and yet almost nobody knows about it. But now you do. Ronald Bush Reisinger is on a cruise, and he claims to be not only a baron, but also the king of a small African island. He lives in a castle, he claims to be Scottish, and he wears a kilt, but he sounds completely American. The Bush part of his name is the same Bush that appears in Anheuser-Busch. So this guy is wealthy. He has a PhD in metaphysics. He's an ordained minister. He's a judge. And he has a past as a radio announcer. And he certainly has the gift of the gab. People on the cruise are intrigued by him at first, but then repelled, as everything he says sounds like an outrageous lie. But his insane, fabulous stories are actually all mostly true. But as we spend time with this king, a sad loneliness is revealed. It's a truly captivating film, and by the way, I have a weird Dutch link where you can watch this thing for free, so look for that in the description box below. So this might be the best known film featured in this video, but just in case you're not familiar, The Act of Killing is an experimental sort of mix between free cinema and cinema verite. Anyway, it follows people, and in particular one guy in Indonesia who participated in mass murders there in 1965 to 66. A horrible genocide. Basically, people who were deemed communists or otherwise against the regime at the time were tortured and killed by these gangsters. And they reenact their killings for the camera in a shocking way. They're proud of what they did. Only towards the end of the film do we start to see traces of remorse. This documentary and its follow-up, The Look of Silence, is a gut-wrenching look at what humans are capable of when the circumstances are particularly wrong. I think it's also evidence of how we wrestle with severe trauma through cover-up. It's a truly surreal, dark film that'll haunt you. I found this quiet, heartwarming Irish documentary a little hard to get into at first. I started it a couple times and gave up on it, thinking it was sort of boring. I was wrong. It's actually a really sweet and engaging portrait of primary school-aged kids attending this idyllic boarding school. And it's viewed in part through the eyes of a married couple who are both teaching there. It's a warm movie that gives you a little bit of hope and optimism, as things featuring precocious children often do. This is well made, with no narration. You're just kind of plopped into this world. I love it. Minding the Gap is a pretty interesting documentary because it places you in this friend group of skateboarders who are becoming grown adults. And at first it seems pretty casual and wholesome, but after a while you realize that all three main characters were victims of abuse. It also becomes clear that one of the guys has been abusive towards his girlfriend. And the way that comes to light was really kind of shocking to me. You know, this is a film where it's kind of intimate, and it sort of feels like, hey, these are my friends, and now suddenly I'm friends with an abuser. And there are also themes in here around racism and misogyny. It reminds you that these kinds of things are not just happening on the periphery of life, they're happening all the time, right in the middle of everything. Okay, so this thing aired on PBS over something like 6 hours across 3 installments. And you can still stream it for free, and it's a really engrossing, great portrait of 2 very different teenage boys living and attending school in rural, impoverished Kentucky. It's incredibly engaging if you approach it with patience, and you grow to really love these 2 characters despite their flaws. One of them plays in a born-again Christian heavy rock band and has a very sweet relationship with his girlfriend. And the 2 of them sort of struggle to fit their Christianity with their kind of dark music interests and piercings and whatnot. And the other guy is sort of held down by his own lack of confidence. He grew up without strong role models, and he struggles to motivate himself or find confidence, despite obviously being a pretty smart and capable person. He's a very likable wordsmith too. Thinking back, this long film really cemented my love for documentaries, so don't miss it. I think it can be difficult to make sort of humanist movies about the impact of technology, but Jawline succeeds at painting an intriguing and empathetic portrait of mini social media celebrities, with a focus on a 16-year-old, clinically, endlessly, performatively optimistic and positive guy named Austin Tester, live streaming his life in rural Tennessee to a small but growing audience of mostly teenage girls who find him both attractive and uplifting. As Austin's audience starts to grow, he attracts the attention of a social media manager who is predictably trouble. And he gets the chance to rub shoulders with bigger social media stars outside of his home state. Through his bumpy journey, we get an honest look at the rather depressing mechanics of internet stardom. It's definitely worth a watch, and if you thought the same was true of this video, then please do all the things. Although, just know that I make some videos that are like this, that are about art and animation and design and illustration and culture. And then I make some other videos that are like black and white and long and boring and strange. So, you know, proceed at your own risk.